What if I told you that the world's wine capital, France, wasn't the birthplace of wine at all? That long before French monks, Bordeaux ranking, champagne flutes existed, people in Georgia were fermenting grapes in clay vessels, celebrating harvests, perfecting winemaking 8,000 years ago. Yet today, when we think wine, most of us think France. Why did France win the crown, even though Georgia first carried the torch? This is the untold story of winemaking, branding, power, prestige, and how history plus culture plus marketing turned France into the wine world's monarch, while Georgia, despite being the cradle, remained largely in the shadow. Let's dive in. Georgia lies in the Caucasus, between Europe and Asia, a cradle of agriculture. Archaeologists have unearthed clay vessels at sites like Gadakrili Gora, about 20 miles south of modern Tbilisi, dating back to about 6,000 to 5,800 BCE. These vessels show chemical traces of grapes and fermentation, meaning Georgians were making wine nearly 8,000 years ago, long before many civilizations had even developed settled agriculture. Their winemaking tradition has remained remarkably continuous. Despite invasions, political upheaval, empires rising and falling, Georgians never abandoned wine. The traditional qvevri method, fermenting wine in clay pots buried underground, often with skins, seeds, sometimes stems, is still practiced and was recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage. Georgia has hundreds of indigenous grape varieties, over 500 known, many local styles but red, white, skin contact, amber wines, sparkling, semi-sweet, etc. It's a place of diversity, of terroir in the broad sense, and of deep culture. Wine isn't luxury there, it is identity, ritual, feast. Contrast that with France. Wine arrived in what is now France via Greek settlers in southern Gaul, then Romans expanded vineyards across the land. Viticulture was adopted, vines planted, methods developed, but where France excelled was in formalizing, institutionalizing, and branding. Several pillars, monastic tradition and terroir becoming doctrine. In the Middle Ages, monks, Benedictines, Cistercians, etc., in Burgundy and other regions noticed that wine from different slopes, soils, microclimates tasted different. They kept records, experimented with practices. Over centuries, that brewed into the concept of terroir, the idea that where a vine grows, soil, elevation, climate, etc., is central to the wine's quality and character. Legal protection and classifications. In the 19th to 20th centuries, as French wine faced competition and fraud, e.g. producers misusing names, adulterating wines, France built legal systems, Appellation d'origine contrôlée, AOC, later Appellation d'origine protégée, AOP, to protect geographical names, enforce production standards, grape variety rules, vineyard location, even yields. Famous example, the Bordeaux classification of 1855, requested for the Paris Expo, ranked Chateau by reputation and price. That ranking still influences prestige, pricing, global perception, marketing, prestige, and luxury culture. France's wine was linked to royalty, aristocracy, and luxury long ago. Champagne, especially, became the drink of celebrations. Brands like Moet and Chandon became symbols of high society. French wine labels came to signify place, prestige, trade, colonial networks, influence. French wine was exported, distributed, admired internationally. French culture, French cuisine, French diplomacy spread its prestige. France had the advantage of being close to major European markets, naval power, colonial connections. These helped French wine be seen not only as agricultural product, but as cultural artifact. Regulation and quality control. The INAO, laws for appellations, control on what constitutes Champagne, Bordeaux, etc. These systems created trust. When you bought a wine labeled Bordeaux AOC or Champagne, There were expectations, legal protections. That ensures consistency, prestige, higher pricing. Given Georgia's deep history and rich culture, why didn't Georgia become the global wine capital in the popular mind instead of France? Several interlocking reasons. Geography and trade infrastructure. While Georgia is at a crossroads, it's mountainous, less accessible historically. Transporting wine, scaling exports, reaching luxury markets in Western Europe and beyond was more difficult. France, by contrast, had ports, established trade with Britain, the rest of Europe, and later with global networks. For example, Bordeaux's location on the Garonne estuary allowed wine to be shipped to England. The Union of Aquitaine and England, under Eleanor of Aquitaine, intensified that trade. Political disruptions. Georgia was invaded many times by Persian, Ottoman, Russian, and Soviet regimes. Under Soviet rule, wine production was often about quantity over quality. State control, collectivization, export constraints, lack of branding or marketing emphasis, these stifled Georgia's ability to build prestige in the global wine market. Georgian grape varieties and indigenous styles were suppressed or neglected. Lack of strong institutional branding and legal protection, historically France's classification systems, AOC, etc., church and monastic legacy, governmental regulation, gave France tools to protect regional names, guarantee quality, signal prestige. Georgia historically lacked similarly powerful global branding institutions. Georgian PDOs/appellations are more recent. Unless the world recognizes them, they don't carry the same weight. Marketing, cultural soft power. France has cuisine, art, fashion, diplomacy, all reinforcing its image of elegance, luxury, refinement. Wine became part of that package. French wine houses, chateaux, vintners invested in creating narratives. Terroir, vintage, chateau, cellar master, aging potential, etc. Georgia's wine was less known, more localized, less promoted globally until very recently. Definitions of luxury and consumer perception. Luxury markets tend to favor things made in regions with long prestige, established names. Bordeaux, Burgundy, Champagne, names that consumers know, trust, assign value. Georgia's wine, even when excellent, was unknown to many consumers. Its packaging, distribution, pricing, branding were often not aligned with what the luxury wine market expects. Legal protections and exclusivity barriers. France aggressively protected names, e.g. Champagne only from Champagne region, via law and international agreements. This exclusivity confers prestige and price premium. Georgia hasn't always had equivalent protections or international recognition. Let's look at some turning points and economic dynamics. How France transformed wine into a multi-billion-dollar luxury industry, and where Georgia is now in that race. French legal and quality systems consolidate power and price. In 1855, Bordeaux classification. In 1935, AOC laws, establishment of INAO. These systems allowed French producers to demand premium prices, maintain reputational consistency. They created scarcity by restricting regions, yields, grape varieties, thereby underpinning luxury. Luxury branding and global recognition. French wine houses invested in recognition. Champagne became associated with celebrations, every new year, every coronation, every royal event. Bordeaux and Burgundy wines became status symbols. Wine critics, collectors, auctions reinforced high-end pricing. It wasn't just wine, it was lifestyle. Scale of exports and distribution networks. France built trade networks, wine merchants, shipping, colonial and post-colonial trade, diplomatic ties. French wine was available in global capitals for centuries. Georgian wine mostly remained regional until the late 20th or early 21st century. Georgian revival and present challenges. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Georgia has been reviving its wine industry. There are now nearly 2,000 registered wineries, many exporting, combining traditional qvevri methods with modern practices. However, Georgia has had to catch up, building brand recognition, securing trade relationships, packaging that appeals to global consumers, legal protections around PDOS/appellations, marketing investment. The worldwide wine market is competitive and steeped in existing prestige hierarchies. Money/market share French wine remains among the world's most valuable wine exports. Because of legal premium names, high demand, prestige, France's wine regions command high per-bottle pricing. Georgia's wines, while growing in quality and recognition, often sell at lower price points and don't yet have the same global luxury reputation. Barriers for Georgia: logistic and cost challenges of export, regulatory standardization, variable quality, less luxury packaging, less experience in branding to external markets, fewer established wine critics, auction presence, fewer historical labels known to consumer-facing luxury markets. So what's the lesson here? Georgia had a head start in time and tradition, but being first doesn't guarantee dominance. The elements that allowed France to overtake Georgia include the ability to create institutions, protect names, develop perceptions of prestige, invest in marketing, align with luxury culture and global distribution. Branding, prestige, cultural narrative can outweigh chronological primacy. When consumers don't know your history, they're buying your story, your image, your perceived reliability and luxury. Georgia today is trying to reclaim its narrative. In wine circles, in food tourism, in festivals, in UNESCO recognition, in emphasizing qvevri, amber wine, indigenous varieties. These are powerful assets. But turning assets into global prestige takes time, investment, consistency, regulatory protection, and strategic brand building. So next time you raise a glass of Bordeaux, Burgundy, or Champagne, remember, those wines dominate not because they invented wine, but because they built an empire around it, legally, culturally, institutionally, with prestige, control, and storytelling. Georgia may have been first, but France became what the world sees. And that says something deep about money, power, branding, how the winner isn't always the originator. If you found this story surprising, drop a comment. What wine region do you think deserves more recognition? Maybe Georgia? Maybe others? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Money Root for more insights like this, digging into history, money, power, culture. Also check the description for more insightful videos like this. Click there next, and I'll see you in the next video.